I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain. We bag enough. I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain. We bag enough. Poppin' tan model BC couldn't brag 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 enough. I guess I didn't swag enough. Stupid fruity pebble chain.
And welcome once again to another episode of the Horizon Roundtable. I am Bob McDonald, and joining me is my co-host Jim Sarro.
Hey, Bob. As we record this, I am physically sitting in my home in Whitefish Bay, Wisconsin, but I'm mentally sitting at the Corteva Coliseum. I am so ready for the Horizon League tournament to really get to the big moments, to get to the big money time.
Absolutely. Jim, you can find on Twitter at Jim Sarro. You can find us on the web at horizonroundtable.com. You can find all of the links to all of our social media accounts and where podcasts are available at horizonroundtable.com/subscribe. Sign up for email alerts too on that page too. Become a patron, patreon.com/Horizon Roundtable. We're going to be doing the off-season features again, so you definitely do want to sign up for those. They're exclusively available to patrons, $1 a month, guys. And it's a great value. We had great stories last year. We're going to have great stories this year, so you definitely want to become a patron. And of course, you can always donate at horizonroundtable.com/donate. So, Jim, yeah, to your point, it's indie time. So, and Jim, as you know, normally what we do is I'm in herding cats mode where I'm trying to wrangle interviews with all of the coaches that some of the coaches that are going to be at the tournament in Indy, but I went in another direction because I had to, because that would have made me insane.
The Horizon's going to Horizon applies to many, many things. And in this case, it applies to your sanity and ability to get top quality guests here on the podcast.
Which I mean, if we're being honest, I'm already insane, but not in this instance because we haven't had Jordan Bernfield on all year. And we always have Jordan Bernfield on this podcast at least once a year. So I'm rectifying that situation. And so that's where we're going first. I'm gonna talk to Jordan Bernfield, and then Jim and I are gonna come back and talk about anything else we didn't touch on in our conversation. All right, so we are now joined by Jordan Bernfield. I know we have him on every year, and it's been a little later than usual, but better late than never. Jordan, thank you, of course, for joining us. As always, happy to have you on.
My pleasure, Bob. Happy to do it.
Yeah. I do. Okay, before we get started, because you were actually on the call for I think 3 of the 5 teams that are heading to Indy this week. Before I do that, I have to ask you one question because I know you were doing some of the games in the regular season with Emeka Okafor, and I swear I heard him say Horizon, a variation of Horizon's Gonna Horizon. I gotta ask, is he listening to this podcast? Because we say that a lot around here.
I mean, yes, I know that. And I think I picked it up from that. And I know that I've said that to him. So he probably, if I had to guess, he probably picked that up from me. Hopefully he's listening to your podcast. But I've picked up that phrase because, especially as he's been new to the league, I've always tried to, help him learn all the things, associated with us just from being in the trenches of it for so many years. And I said, look, and you know this as well as anyone, I said, what you see in the standings doesn't necessarily matter at this time of year. And as we get closer to the end, especially this year too. I mean, how many years have I done this with you where we're like, there's 7 teams that go in this thing. And now obviously there's only 5, given the games that occurred over the last couple of days. But, it is so wide open sometimes, and game to game, having done this as long as I have, sometimes I feel like I know what's going to happen, and then the opposite does. And so, as a listener to the Horizon Roundtable, I have been known to say, Horizon's going to Horizon. And so I, I saw your tweet about it, and I was trying to think of when exactly he said it, but I do remember he said it.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I remember him saying it during the second Wright State Robert Morris game.
Yes.
I did hear it, and like I had to rewind it. Did he say that? He said that. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so as I mentioned, three of the five teams you've seen as part of your broadcast to the during the season. One of them you didn't see was Northern Kentucky, and they. We talk about Horizon's gonna Horizon, but this year the tournament's kind of chalky, with the exception of Northern Kentucky beating a team you have seen, Oakland, and that was kind of an interesting dynamic because Oakland was at the hometown with their hometown crowd. They beat Northern Kentucky pretty handily during the season, and then all of a sudden, Northern Kentucky flips in another gear, which has actually happened multiple times this season because they're 10-10. Their 10-10 record kind of belies what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that when you look at Northern Kentucky, it's not really a shock that they're going to Indy. I know that they were 10-10, but I also think that, this as well as anyone. Once that calendar flips to March, it's hard to bet against Aaron Horn. And I think part of the reason for that is that they have been a program which has been as good as any in the postseason, I think because of the style that they play, right? Like they are a zone defense that has a lot of different waves to it, and it's difficult to play against in a tournament format. Greg Campy said as much in his radio show the day before the game, right? I mean, he was saying that, he sort of compared them in a way. I mean, it's different, but to Syracuse in that, like, when you play against a team that has a particular defensive style in a tournament setting, it can be difficult to play against. And so, I think that when you look at Northern Kentucky, just the way that they defend, the physicality that they play with, the fact that you've got guys like L.J. Wells, who obviously had a big game last night and is experienced at this time of year. Yes, it's maybe slightly surprising only because NKU has been up and down this year. But I think that when you look at sort of the history of that program, the other thing I would just say too is that, like, when you look at Northern Kentucky, they have two of the best guards in the league. I mean, O'Day and Goresger are excellent. And at this time of
Yeah.
year, when you're in a tournament setting, you know, when you have good guard play and you have good defense, that's usually the way to win these games. And so, things just, I thought Oakland was a really talented team. And obviously, Brody Robinson was, trying to do his best Jack Golke impression down
Oh
the
yeah.
stretch last night. But they just didn't have momentum down the stretch of the season. I mean, they were losing a lot of games at home that typical Oakland teams would not lose, and it just didn't feel like the mojo was there for them. And so I think Northern Kentucky was able to pounce on that. And you know, I feel like I see Darren Horn every year in Indianapolis. So why would this year be any different?
It's funny because I had to double check, and it's been a while since we've seen Darren Horn in Indianapolis. I think he wasn't there last year. Was there the year before. Obviously, won it in 23. Welcome back, Darren Horn.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's an excellent coach, and I think that when you listen to the press conferences that the other coaches around the league do when they talk about other teams in the league. Northern Kentucky, because of the history in the last, 12 to 15 years, it is talked about in such a respectful way, right? Like anyone that follows this league knows how good that program has been. And the proof is in the fact that they've got multiple NCAA tournament appearances over the last 10 years. So, yes, they were the 7 seed this year, which is surprising just because, that's not typical of Northern Kentucky, but they were still 10-10, right? It's not like they
Yeah,
finished 6-14 and got a win
yeah,
over an Oakland team that was that much better. So
yeah.
upset a little bit, but never surprising to see NKU at this time
Sure.
of year.
Well, I think Northern Kentucky also kind of suffers from the fact that, yes, they had a 500 record in the Horizon League, but the problem is six other teams were above 500. So even though
Yeah,
overall they won 18 games in the overall, that 10 and 10 obviously they kind of suffered from. And of course,
yeah.
they're going to end up playing on Sunday, a team you actually did get a chance this year to see, which is Green Bay. I know last year, we kind of figured you weren't going to see them last year, but there they are this year, and it is amazing the turnaround that Doug Gottlieb has had with this particular team. I think in the preseason, I know for sure that I was very high on the returnees, and I'm glad to be right.
Yeah, Bob, I think they're a great story. I really do. Last year it was easy for, you know, people on social media to dunk on Doug Gottlieb in Green Bay
Sure,
because he's, been a media figure for a long time and he's outspoken. And I said this to Doug when we visited months ago, like, hey, you took a lot last year, and he knows. I mean,
sure,
and that it was a tough year, obviously, for them. But I think they're a great story because Doug's done a really good job this year. The assistants he's put around him have really helped, and he has been very gracious in the way that he's credited them for the way that this program is turned. And further, I think it's a great story because they have a bunch of Wisconsin guys who are from near Green Bay that it sounds cliche, but it does feel like for Preston Reedinger and Marcus Hall and guys like that, they are playing for the name on the front of the jersey, right? Like
hmm
whenever you listen to them talk, it is clear that they care about Green Bay succeeding. And in this world of every year is free agency and the transient nature of players now and the transactional nature by which this sport is currently governed. It is sort of heartwarming to see this story because these are, by and large, Wisconsin kids who really
hmm
want to win there. And
sure,
so I think that there's a personal backing behind it, which makes them such an appealing story. And also just having a guy like Ramel Bethea and that incredible story that he is 29 years old and playing college basketball after serving in the Navy and being someone who never even expected to play basketball, let alone
sure,
play for Division I college. So I think that there's just so many pieces. And then Justin Allen being a kid who was at Carnegie Mellon and then getting this opportunity to shine on the Division I level. I mean, it just you go down the list and it's hard not to find them a very likable group. And so, I think it's going to be a great game between Green Bay and
sure,
Northern Kentucky. And as I've joked with you many times, I have no idea what's going to happen because no one ever does. But I think that it's a good matchup for the league because
sure,
either way, you've got compelling storylines.
sure. Now, speaking of like kind of retaining that local talent, um, there's Detroit Mercy, and I know you didn't get an opportunity
Yes.
to see them,
Not on
broadcast
the
their
not on
games
the
this year.
ESPN package, no.
Not on the
But
ESPN package, but
yeah,
similar to Green Bay situation, Coach Monty, his whole entire philosophy is Michigan, specifically the Detroit metro area, and unlike a lot of the teams in the league, with probably the noted exception of Wright State, he is built from the ground up with freshmen and sophomores. I mean, yes, he's obviously got a dynamic player in Orlando Lovejoy, but he's certainly Orlando Lovejoy and Legend Jeter, two local kids who decided to stay at Detroit Mercy.
yeah,
But a lot of the guys that but outside of those two, it seems like he's definitely built long term with the sophomores that came in, specifically TJ Nadeau, Ryan Callambay, and then the freshmen who are just absolutely dynamic. I had such a hard time picking my all freshman team this year because there are so many good freshmen in this league, that I felt bad leaving at least one Detroit Mercy guy off. But yeah,
Yeah.
that, I mean, between Tyler Spratt and Lance Stone, and we've seen some of the other guys come in. It seems like Coach Monty is going, while everybody is kind of getting old. Coach Monty is kind of going in another direction, and it's working for him. And the turnaround for them, I mean, remember 2 years ago they won one game. Now they're,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's amazing. And I would also say too, Bob, that like, I did see Detroit Mercy last year when Monty took over. And
mhm,
even though it wasn't for the ESPN package,
yeah,
they played at Loyola Chicago and I got a chance to talk to Monty at that time. And he was just starting things out. But one of the things that I give him a lot of credit for is that, they have four returning starters, which
mhm,
in today's college basketball, as we were just talking about, you really don't see that anymore, right? I mean, a
sure,
lot of these teams, I mean, look at RMU, right? They had success and then their cupboard got raided, and now they have a completely new roster other than Ryan Prather, that are back in Indy. Detroit Mercy was able to keep guys around. And so in sort of a micro level sense, they were sort of able to build on last year, which is now sort of a concept that has faded into oblivion,
mhm,
given the nature of college basketball today. But having Callambay back, having Jeter back, having Lovejoy back, having Nadu back, these guys are they have been in the system now for 2 years with Mark, and I think that's really important. And when you listen, one of the things that I love most about this job is that we get to talk to the coaches and we get to
mhm,
learn the real stories. And one of the things I get from a lot of coaches, all over this year is just how valuable it is when you have someone that has returned and they have been in your system for more than a year, because by that point they're going to know it. And part of the challenge for these college coaches now is like the whole year you are teaching because they haven't been there and they haven't had years of experience in your system. And so, you know, with so many teams having to develop chemistry on the fly, basically once these kids get to school and then do it for 5 months and then the whole team changes the following year. In this particular situation, Detroit Mercy's been able to build with that. And, given that Jeter and Lovejoy are kids that were with Monty at Eastern that came over that have been um, part of he knew what he was getting with these guys.
mhm.
It's cool. And look, I'm really happy for Detroit Mercy just in general. Obviously, when Antoine was there, it was a fun time because of what he was doing, but the program was sort of never exactly where they wanted it to be. And I think that obviously the Titans have had some rough seasons in recent memory. And so to see this turnaround and to see them as a 3 seed, this is really cool stuff. So I'm just really happy
Sure.
for that community and for those people that are connected to Detroit Mercy, that they're able to have a season that is as joyful as this one has been.
Sure. Now we talk about building from the ground up, and this is kind of I want to segue into Wright State, and my concern with them in the preseason is that they kind of lost too much, and they were really relying upon a lot of young guys, like maybe guys who only had like a year or so under their belts, and had guys who were freshmen. They have proved me wrong multiple times this season. Especially Kellen Pickett and Michael Cooper. Those guys. I mean, those guys. Honestly, those guys weren't as much as I knew about the Detroit Mercy freshmen coming in.
Yeah.
I knew relatively little about guys like Michael Cooper and Kellen Pickett. And those guys are absolutely a huge part of their overall success. And then
Yes.
bringing a guy like TJ Birch, who's only a sophomore, if I'm not mistaken, and a guy like Donovan Pangotis who's awesome on defense, and then having a guy like Michael Amari Bay, kind of the lone kind of senior holdover to kind of be the focal point up front. They kind of blew me away with how were able to perform. They blew me away on how they were able to perform against Cleveland State. They just basically locked them down in the paint. Of course, this is Cleveland State, and they didn't have anybody in the paint at the time. So, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, look, I think Clint Sargent's done a marvelous job. I mean, just look, they knew they had a problem. The problem was they were not good defensively. It was very apparent. I mean, the last
Yeah.
couple of years, they were among the best, most efficient offensive teams in
Hmm.
America. I mean, points per game, field goal percentage were in the top five nationally each of the last couple of years. And it
Yeah.
wasn't translating to wins. Okay. So
Hmm.
why is that? Because their defense had struggled. And, I've joked about this with Clint and with some of the Wright State people this year. When we used to go to Wright State, and as you know, we've been there a lot of times, or we've had a lot of Wright State games over the year, and I've gotten to
Hmm.
know their staff well as a result, just because we've had so much access to them. And even when they were really successful, one of the things that Scott Nagy used to say to us all the time is like, "Yeah, our offense is great, but I really want to get our defense
Yeah.
where it needs to be." And so it wasn't like this was not a secret, right? Everyone knew that defensively they had to be a lot better, and now they
Hmm.
are. And Clint Sargent and his staff were very deliberate in bringing in players this year that you mentioned some of these freshmen that have been great, but guys that were committed to playing defense. And the fact
Yeah.
that they were number one in the league in field goal percentage defense this year, or in scoring defense, rather, if I had told you before the year that Wright State was going to be leading the league in scoring defense, then most likely what you would have said is, well, then they're going to win the league, right? And they did because we knew
Yeah.
that they could score. That was never the issue. The issue
Yeah.
was how do they become a team that can get stops when they have to?
Sure.
And they became that. And look, Kellen Pickett is freshman of the year for a reason. He was fantastic. Michael Cooper led them in scoring as a freshman, which is obviously extremely impressive in its own right. And TJ Birch, here's a kid that comes in from Ball State and is top five in the country in steals and,
Hmm.
leads them in assists and is one of their top scorers. I mean, they didn't have to remake the whole roster because they do have some guys back, but the
Sure.
additions that they made, some of the freshmen and otherwise, have helped sort of change the entire mindset of this roster. And as a result, they won the league title for the first time since 2019-20.
Sure. Now, one of my major questions in the offseason with them was not the defense, but the offense. That was my question because I wasn't because obviously in years past, you know,
Yeah.
they've had dynamic scores, be it Loudon Love, be it Grant Basile, be it Trey Calvin and Tanner Holden, be it Brandon Knoll last year. I was thinking to myself, okay, who is going to replace those guys? I mean, especially between who's going to replace, who's going to be there to score? Who's going to be that scoring option that Brandon Knoll was last year? And it turned out it was everybody because any
Yeah,
one time it was somebody else who's stepping up and leading and scoring when they needed to.
for sure. I mean, look, obviously losing Noel was huge. And you're
Hmm.
right. I mean, over the years, they've had some outstanding scores and some of the best scores in the league. I mean, certainly Tanner comes to mind that we just got to see Tanner and Loudon when we were at Wright State a couple of weeks
Yeah.
ago, which was great. And calling the games for those guys was a privilege. I mean, they were incredible players that were such nice kids. I mean, when we get a chance to talk to these players, I know it sounds corny, but I mean it sincerely. Like one of the things I love about the league is just it's the people. I mean, you get to meet so many nice kids and nice coaches and administrators through doing this. And I think they Brandon Knowles great. I mean, he was obviously a great scorer, great rebounder, was a great story, dealt with multiple injuries, was kind of an old freshman and was using his slow development to his advantage and really became such a great player. At Wright State, and obviously being I think at Ohio State now. I mean, that's great for him. But I think the difference with this Wright State team is that they don't have to rely on one guy to get them 20, right? Like when they had Holden and Calvin, it was so much about like those two guys have to just keep scoring because were they going to get the defensive stops? Maybe, maybe not. So now they're much more balanced. They are still efficient. I mean, they shoot the three well, but they're not, standing out in the around the arc. They're, Birch is such a good slasher and opens up space for guys on the floor. And so, I mean, they're different. They're a different team, but they're also a better team. And, I think that the way that they are playing this year is the recipe for how you get to the end at Indy, right? Like, so we've seen Horizon League teams that have amazing offenses, but when it comes down to having to win in the tournament, you got to be able to get stops. You got to be able to defend a team and frustrate a team. And, Wright State is certainly a lot better at that this year than they have been in recent past.
Yeah. And last, of course, we get to the one team that beat Wright State twice. You saw them twice. We talked a little bit about Robert Morris, but it just seems to me Andy Toole he's cracked the code as far as how to work with a completely new roster. Because if I'm not mistaken, last year he worked with a roster that only had like 2 holdovers. One of them, of course, was Alvaro Folgueras, but this year he only had Ryan Prather. But the entire team dynamic has just been outstanding, and not to take away anything from Ryan Prather either, because he's just been an outstanding kind of linchpin, if you will, for this team to kind of get everybody acclimated. And they're going into Indianapolis as one of the hottest teams, actually the hottest team in the conference there. I wouldn't want to play them either.
They've won 8 in a row. I mean, then they're playing as well as anybody. When we had them the first time when they played Wright State at their place, the storyline with Robert Morris really was that they were kind of in this fits and starts mode, right? They would win a couple, lose a couple, win a couple, lose a couple. They just couldn't get out of sort of the rut of being a 500 team. And from that point forward, literally, they haven't been losing. They keep winning. And so I think Andy Toole is brilliant. And what he has been able to do with Ryan Prather and using him in that point guard role. I mean, they Hill's out for the year. They've been playing with Vargas out for part of the time. And those are significant pieces that have been missing, and they're still winning. And when we were talking about Detroit Mercy and the fact that they've got so many guys back, Robert Morris by contrast is almost an entirely new roster. The holdover is Prather. And Prather to me, I mean, look, Deshaun Good won Player of the Year and deserves it. I mean, we said it on the air that the way things are going, it looks like Deshaun Good could win Player of the Year. That was one of my few predictions that turned out to be right. So maybe I should.
Wish I had listened to you, because we did not vote for him. We have him first team, but we didn't have him as Player of the Year.
Right. This is the one time I can buy a lottery ticket. But
there you go.
But as good as he is and has been, Prather is playing outstanding ball. And the way that because he was in the system last year and he knows what Andy Toole is looking for, the way he's running the point, that game that he had against Oakland a couple of weeks ago, where he had 10 assists and no turnovers. Okay. He's not supposed to be the primary point guard, but he has played not only in that role, but at an extremely elite level over the last month plus. And it is why Robert Morris is so dangerous right now. And frankly, I know I've seen a lot of the prognosticators picking them to win. It's not surprising because they, similar to last year, they have a good point guard, but they also, like last year, have waves of different bigs that do different things. Like last year, Folgueras and Plett, to me, totally different players, but the way that Andy Toole could use them interchangeably and the way that he could use Dickerson both on the interior and out at the perimeter as the defensive player of the year made them so confusing to play against, right?
Sure.
And this year, it's obviously all different pieces other than Ryan, but with Hidakudis and Good, they're different types of big men, but playing them together makes it awfully challenging for the rest of
Oh
the
yeah.
league. And so, Robert Morris, that is a really, I think, because of the nature of where we are and the fact that this was an almost new roster, it's taken them
Mhm.
5 months to sort of find their stride, but they found it. And,
Mhm.
they are obviously, the hottest team between them and Detroit Mercy, the hottest teams. And, would it surprise me if Robert Morris wins this again? No. I mean, right now, I think they're the favorite.
Yeah. Well, all right. Those are the only. That's all. That's all I had. Now you're going to be on both calls on Monday. The first game is at 7 on
Yes.
ESPNU, and the second is at 9:30. Theoretically 9:30. Hopefully, we don't have any overtime games this year as we did
Last
last year.
year, last year I think we started it. I remember seeing you between games,
Yeah.
and we were talking about how late at night it was going to be. I think the second
Yeah.
game started at 9:52
Yeah.
Eastern time, if I remember correctly. And it was obviously a late night, but I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, I love doing this. It is, a great professional honor and pleasure that I get to be there to watch one of these teams punch their ticket to the dance. I mean that as sincerely as can be. It's awesome. And it's just going to be fun. I mean, I think that the 5 teams remaining, there's good stories all over the leagues, certainly. And, there's other teams that if they had made it to Indy would have been fun to cover too. But I
Mhm.
think that the 5 teams that are going to be there this year are all teams with compelling storylines, with
Mhm.
likable players and coaches, and will make this the best it can be. And frankly, I can't wait for Sunday's game because I don't know how this is going to go with Green Bay and Northern Kentucky. But knowing that Monday you're going to get Wright State playing one of them, and then I think that RMU Detroit Mercy game is fascinating just because
Sure.
you know they're the 2 hottest teams. So I
Yeah.
mean, Wright State's been hot too, but just Robert Morris beating him twice down the stretch. I mean, it's uh it's going to be great theater. It's going to be a lot of fun. And the way it always goes in Indy, as you know, is we basically don't sleep for 3 days, and then you wake up on Wednesday and
Mhm.
you're like, let's do it again next year.
Yes. Or I feel like you're saying there's definitely a possibility of Horizon's gonna Horizon next week.
Oh, that's Bob. It's the most appropriate phrasing of anything. But we've had this discussion before. I'll say this quickly.
Yeah.
Like a lot of years, I feel like, and we've said this on the air, like a lot of years, it feels like people go, oh, well, the Horizon League's wide open, which is code for, I don't know. But this year, I mean, the fact that Northern Kentucky was the 7th seed at 10-10
Yeah.
shows you that there was very little separating basically 9 of the teams in this league.
Hmm.
I mean, Cleveland State, obviously coaching change. Rob had an entirely new roster with Danielle going to UNT, and so you didn't know what was going to happen there. And then coaching change at IUND with Ben coming in and all those kids coming with them from the Division II level. So, but even still, like IUND went to Oakland and blew them out when they were the 2 seed, right at the time. So the league, the Horizon was going to Horizon a lot this year, and it did.
There you go.
And it was a very fun year, and I think it's going to culminate in a very compelling tournament.
Absolutely. Well, Jordan, thank you as always for joining us. Again, I promise next year we'll get you on earlier.
No
But
worries.
But for those of you who are not making it to Indy, ESPNU at 7 o'clock, ESPN2 at 9:30. Jordan Bernfield is on the call, and Randolph Childress will be with him. But again, thank you for joining us one more time.
Yeah, and the championship game Tuesday night, 7 Eastern on ESPN. So we'll be
There you go.
excited to have another Horizon League team punch their ticket and represent the way the league has the last few years.
All right, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
So yeah, Jim, you missed that conversation, and I know until proven otherwise, you do believe that Emeka Okafor does listen to the podcast. I'm holding on to that hope as well.
A man's got a dream.
So we talked about, so Jordan and I talked about the teams that are heading to Indy, but before we get into, we're going to talk about the teams that didn't make it. But before we do, obviously, Jim, I feel like I got to give you some time as a Green Bay guy to talk about Green Bay, talk about the Phoenix, talk about the fact that I'm going to venture to guess on Sunday you will not be on press row and will be hanging out in the stands for that game between Green Bay and Northern Kentucky.
Well, I was either wildly confident or I'm just frivolous with money, but I had already purchased a courtside ticket for the game prior to the game being confirmed that they're going to play. So I just, had a feeling that this is a team. I'm not saying they're a team of destiny, they're going to go all the way or anything, but what I am saying is this is a team that's learned their lessons. This is a team that has seen the lowest of lows and has really embraced and not taken winning for granted. Sometimes you get complacent. If you're super successful, you can get a little complacent. And these guys, play as if they're still a 4-win team, not the way they play on the court, but with the mindset of every opportunity is the next biggest opportunity. And I really love that about this Green Bay team. I find their style of play to be a little, right now, I'd say unflappable, in that they were on the ropes against many teams coming down the stretch. Northern Kentucky had them on the ropes. Obviously, in the Horizon League tournament, they went from a 15-point lead to a 2-point lead, and they've just been figuring out ways to get the job done, figuring out ways to seal the deal. And that goes a long way in how I'm feeling about, the ability to win in the Horizon League tournament. At the end of the day, these games should be close. These are the five best. These are now the 5 best teams remaining in the league, and in order, they're teams one. There's 4 of the top 5 seeding, and then 1 outsider. So these games should be highly entertaining, highly competitive. For anybody that's been to the Horizon League tournament before and seen the intensity that the teams play with, it's at another level. And I feel like the Phoenix are in a place where they're on good footing. The issue for the Phoenix, they got absolutely roasted by Mr. Donovan O'Day twice in the regular season. So they're going to have to figure something out.
I had a feeling he was going to make you nervous. Although given the way the seeding went, I thought for sure he makes people nervous. He definitely made Oakland nervous. And we'll talk about the team. And let's go ahead and segue into kind of what happened to Oakland, which was did a lot of stuff, but not enough time to finish it.
There weren't enough missed free throws for Northern Kentucky. There were many, but not enough.
There were, and that's a problem. That's something we didn't. Jordan and I didn't discuss is that Northern Kentucky has had from time to time a free throw shooting problem, and Oakland came very close to taking advantage of that. And by Oakland, I mean Brody Robinson, because he scored 36, and he could. I mean, I think he set a single season. I think he set a tournament record for 10, scoring 10 3-pointers. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. By the way, I feel like it occurs to me that there's a remote chance he shows up on the all tournament team just for that performance. We've been down this road a couple of times, but I don't know. We'll see.
It's interesting too. He had obviously a massive game. It's also interesting to me though that in the late stretches of the game, he really forced the issue. Sometimes it worked out where he, made a big 3. He also took a few that were like, but at the time it was like, okay, you're down 10. You're just getting shots up, any shot as quickly as possible. And yet knowing with the benefit of hindsight how things worked out, I'm sure he would like to probably have taken a little more time on a few of those shots that he did put up. But yeah, he was fantastic. I mean, I thought he was the best player in the league in the regular season, just because of the impact he has in the way that Oakland played and how he was really the proverbial straw that stirs the drink. And he left everything on the court in what could be his last college game. So, I mean, pretty amazing game for him. Obviously, it probably hurts like hell to fall short. And Oakland just had a terrible time all season at home. The friendly confines of the arena were not too friendly for them. And
Yeah, I
unfortunately, at the
know.
biggest moment, they didn't get the W that they needed.
They did not. I mean, yeah, I mean, they were close, but it's just, I mean, no cigar. I mean, really,
Yeah, and then you
it
kind of
happens.
worry. I was saying, then you kind of worry. I don't want to say you're worried because they're going to put together a financial package in the offseason to
Oh,
retool
sure.
this thing, but they're losing. I mean, they didn't play that many guys, and they're losing five of them. And with
Yeah,
Isaac Garrett as having eligibility, but having a mega season, he's a big guy. I mean,
he
he
is a
certainly could
question
have.
mark for sure.
He could certainly have options outside of Oakland. Obviously, as a Horizon League fan, I would love to, for him to stay in the Horizon League. But just
Sure.
being pragmatic about the landscape that we're in, Oakland is facing a little bit of a rebuild again, and that's kind of the nature of how how they stack the deck. You want to get old, so they go out and get old guys. They have the money from all the buy games that they play to pay top dollar to get some of these really, really high end players. And unfortunately, all of that went into a 16-16 season, and now they're basically, if you look, I mean, they have like maybe two guys on the existing roster. Mashure, depending on how he looks when he comes back, maybe three guys that you can kind of point to and say, okay, we got some building blocks, And I'm giving the benefit of the doubt to Coy Thurman, who was a highly rated junior college player, but wasn't able to get a lot of impact on the court because of the impact of Brody Robinson this year. So maybe they've got 2 to 3 guys that you're building around, but it's going to be, assuming they can keep Garrett, maybe three. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting offseason for the Golden Grizzlies.
I just thought of this. Whoever, I have a bad feeling, whoever, because like I said, we're going to be doing the features on Patreon again this season. I have this just very bad feeling that whoever Griffin Beers does the profile on, you've cursed them. Because remember last year he did a profile on Cooper Craggs, and like at the last minute, transferred.
I
I
know
think it
there's
happened
no,
the year before too, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah,
whoever Griffin does the feature on, I'm a little concerned about.
he is the SI Jinx, the cover Jinx. But yeah, Griffin needs to find. I know in today's day and age, there really aren't any true walk-ons anymore. But he needs to find whoever dude number 13 is and do the profile on that guy. And when
There you
people
go.
say, "Why are you doing it on so and so who never plays?" Be like, "Hey, abundance of caution."
Yeah, he's gonna, and we at least know he's gonna be here next year. We don't. Oh, we know. We theoretically know he'll be there next year. So yeah, that's kind of where Oakland's at. Let's talk about the two teams at the bottom: IU Indy and Cleveland State. And that Cleveland State was able to get out, was actually able to beat IU Indy is a minor miracle because they're just banged up. I mean, they didn't have, again, Dan Nessa with that shoulder issue. He has not played. Josiah Harris was on concussion protocol. I'm like, oh, awesome. So great. They didn't have anybody to rebound. I mean, they had Holden Pierre Louis, but he was, that really didn't help him against Bright State. Um, IU Indy. I know we talked about this last episode. They do have a guy like Kyler D'Agostino to kind of build around, and I feel like once they get a full recruiting cycle uh, together for IU Indy, I feel like it's going to be a little better for them. This year was kind of not that great, but Cleveland State, they need to get some guys who play defense. It worked against IU Indy, but it certainly did not work against Wright State.
Yeah, in Cleveland State, I mean, I had kidded around a few weeks ago about how they were on a mission to end their season, and they started that IU Indy game on said mission. Like
Yeah.
they did not play particularly well the first handful of
No.
minutes, but then they got rolling and they really made the plays that were needed in the second half to kind of, keep IU Indy at bay. And that was after, I mean, like some of the most abysmal looking press break you're ever going to see in the second half. I mean, IU Indy was
Oh.
absolutely had them dead in the water, and then just couldn't make enough
I mean, the
baskets
one
to
thing
keep
that
the
was
press bet up.
driving me insane about that there was like that stretch is that they had Trey Beard, who is far and away the shortest guy on the court, inbounding. And not only the shortest guy on the court, he is one of the guys who is one of Cleveland State's primary ball handlers between him and Ice Emery. And he was one inbounding. I'm like, it was driving me insane. And I think I think Rob Summers heard me telepathically because after the timeout, he had Jaden Lipscomb inbounding, and they did so much better. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was what was so bad is in that stretch, like they couldn't even get the first pass. Like, a lot of times
No,
under pressure, you
they
get the
could
ball
not.
in and then you're getting trapped and you're trying to go cross court or you're trying to go down the court and you're getting your, longer passes intercepted. They couldn't even get the first pass in. A lot of times they're going
No.
to Emery in the corner and the pass was way off. So yeah, it was very, like, it did not look good. But then they steadied themselves. I mean, it would be so easy for any of these teams, that are having a difficult season to just be like, oh, the hell with it. But
Yeah.
they definitely in that game they had enough wherewithal to right the ship and hold on and extend themselves back out to what 10-point victory or whatever they had against the Jaguars. But when you look at Cleveland
Yeah.
State, the issue that you run into for them is Foster Wonders that should be the end of his basketball career in college.
It is. Yeah.
Jaden Lipscomb, the same thing. Trey Beard,
Actually,
maybe.
Jaden Lipscomb had a red shirt year, so
Okay, they listed him
theoretically,
as a
Jaden Lipscomb.
senior,
Okay.
so
They
yeah,
do
on the
have
web.
that's the reason why, because he is as an academically a senior. So, but
Yep.
technically, theoretically, he could come back because I think he only played 2 years, 2 games in 1 year, and got hurt, and so he's a red shirt.
Okay.
Ice Emery, I guess it's a senior because he walked for senior day, but I feel like the portal's calling him,
Well, and there's a guy that
even if
he
he
went from
does.
he went from Merrimack to Dodge City to Western Carolina to Cleveland State. So there's 4 years, but the junior college year probably doesn't count. I would be surprised. I mean, he's a really nice player. He's the Energizer Bunny off the bench, obviously 6 man of the year. I kind of feel like if you put up some decent numbers on a team like this, it's going to be hard to not be
Yeah.
tempted. You could, love your coaching and love your staff, but it's also, you never know who's in your ear telling you about, hey, you can turn this into whatever,
Of
or
course.
upgrade an opportunity. So you're going to face an uphill battle with Lipscomb and Ice and Nessa and, maybe
Nessa is
Josiah.
going to be the big question mark. I don't know. And Josiah Harris. I guess the big question marks I have for both Harris and Nessa is the injury factor, because Josiah Harris, this is the same issue he ran into at Akron last year, is that he kept getting hurt, and health has been an issue for Josiah Harris. I mean, it's not his fault. I mean, stuff happens. I mean, you're not concussing yourself.
Yeah.
Somebody did that to you. And the same thing with Dayanessa with the shoulder injury. And that was the shoulder injury, and I don't know the extent of that. And I guess I'm sure there's going to be question marks for definitely Nessa, maybe not so much Harris. And if there
Yeah.
not for Harris, that's helpful for Cleveland State. I feel like a guy like Pierre Louis, he'll be back. I feel like that's a guy who's definitely going to be back next year. He definitely needs he definitely needed a year under his belt. But a guy like him, a guy like Kamari Jones, I feel like he'll be back next year. Unlike last year, I feel like at least we're not going to have a whole new roster this year with a whole new coach.
Well, and I think the guys that are like more regionally based, Josiah Harris, obviously he went from West Virginia to Akron to now Cleveland State. Like, it's clear he wants to stay in the area. Like his.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's from Richmond Heights, so that makes perfect sense.
Yep,
He's
and
from
Kamari
he's from the
Jones
Cleveland
is,
suburb. Yeah,
I'd say, isn't he Ohio based? If I remember correctly, originally Ohio.
Kamari Jones actually is from Indy.
Indy, yeah, but he's like a regionally makes sense to be in Cleveland. and he obviously had a good year the previous year at Western Carolina. So you've got some guys that you could see staying. It's just really going to be about what kind of continuity Cleveland State can put together, so they're not having to bring in 12 guys again. And the same thing, when you look at IU Indy, 3-17 in league play is not what they're looking for. 7-25
No.
overall. They're losing two major players. Well, again, all eligibility things that they list Jackson Edwards and Finley Woodward as seniors on the website that were kind of major guys for them.
Yeah, and Woodward for sure is and Woodward, those two guys it seems like those two guys for sure are not going to be there.
And Jackson Edwards he came on super strong. I mean, I thought when we had Coach Howlett on the original podcast, I had asked about Edwards because I thought that was a guy that, like, on paper, that guy made a lot of sense for what they want, how they want to play. And he ended up, proving me right in that regard. You have some interesting young guys, though. With Micah Davis and McGuire Mitchell and Cam Tinsley. Those were all guys that played. Those were guys that got experience. And so in a down year, you could almost look at it like what Detroit Mercy had, which where they got a lot of young guys, some experience.
Now I should point out to your point, just like Jaden Lipscomb, Jackson Edwards. He's got a redshirt situation going on because he only played 5 years. He only played 5 games. Yeah, he only played 5 games with the Bonnie. So if he's back next year, that's going to be a big thing for him, for them. So if you got a guy like Jackson Edwards, you got a guy like Jackson Edwards and Micah Davis, and obviously Kyler D'Agostino and McGuire Mitchell, that core group together. That's going to be a big deal for them, and it's going to definitely help them moving forward. And like I said, they'll probably benefit from a longer recruiting cycle this time around, where it felt kind of stunted, really. And as it turns out, having that abbreviated recruiting cycle doesn't really work out so well, as we witnessed last year with Green Bay.
Yeah, and you look at for IU Indy, like some of the bigger guys, bulkier, the 6'8", 220 guys that they got, they're all freshmen and redshirt freshmen. And then you had a bunch of guys that Coach Howlett had grabbed, that he either played with or against in, the D2 level. And, you take some of those pieces and then you mix in some, more ready to go D1 level guys. And, their system isn't that far off from working. I mean, like, I've said this before, like a lot of the bottom end of the league in the past, and I've witnessed it with Green Bay, you've witnessed it with Detroit, you've witnessed it with past IU Indy teams. They just got their doors blown off every time. Like IU Indy, IU Indy team, it was a way better 3-17 team than we've seen in this league for some time. Right? Like they were competitive. Sure. They made you work. They maybe didn't have the horses, but they made you work for it. And so that gives you some hope for their future state if they can keep some of these younger pieces, or a guy like D'Agostino, who's the second leading scorer in the league in conference play, or if you can keep Edwards and now pile on a few more guys that fit. There's an opportunity to, like I said, maybe be next year's Detroit Mercy, where you got your young guys and then against the odds you kept your older main players. Like think of the impact that Orlando Lovejoy, who was going to leave and then he didn't. Think of how much better Detroit Mercy is because of that choice. And that's the same thing if you can hold on to D'Agostino or Edwards and then, get a few more pieces around that. So kind of a brighter future than many 7-25 teams might say they have.
Yeah. By the way, so I'm going to go over to Purdue Fort Wayne, and apparently the portal season has begun.
It's April 7th already?
Yeah. See, here's the thing. And this is what happened last year, too. We know the portal isn't officially open, but that is not stopping. It's not stopping transfers from being announced. And in Purdue Fort Wayne's case, that apparently is the case for DeAndre Craig. And we got to get used to also agents announcing these things too, apparently, because his agent announced that he would be entering the transfer portal, DeAndre Craig, and I do suspect that he won't be alone. That's for sure. One of the things that, however, but I will say this: one of the things that Purdue Fort Wayne really does need to work on needs to work on next year, the front court. Because this year, Was not
they're
great.
going to be
I mean,
they're going to be wiped out because you have Max Nelson, not a front court player, but he was a big guy defensively at least. He's graduating. Elise, I believe is listed as a 17th year senior on the website. Darius Duffy's graduate student. So again, unless they get some sort of additional year from their junior college experience, some of those guys will be gone. Obviously, Deshaun Dendry Craig is moving on. McKaylee Stevenson, again, another former junior college player. So maybe there's some eligibility there somehow. But they're, of their main guys, they didn't have a lot to play with. I mean, they had like 7 guys that they worked with. They're losing 5 of them, and had not been the top scorer. I mean, I would love for him to be in this league again next year. He is just a dynamic scorer.
Oh, yeah.
And in that Green Bay game on Tuesday, I mean, him and Craig, they were nowhere in the first half, and both those guys really got cooking for stretches in the second half. I mean, those guys you can hold them down, you can slow them down, but you can't stop them. So, but yeah, Fort Wayne is really looking at like an uphill battle in terms of where their roster is going to stand. And especially when you think about, like, I kind of went through and said, okay, which guys are they losing? Which guys might they lose? And then what young, interesting players do they have? And of the 6 teams that aren't playing anymore in the Horizon League, they only had one guy that I was like, there's a guy that played a little bit and looked interesting. That was Kaba. That was the one I kind of liked. I know there's the other guard. I can't think of his name right now, but he played in the Horizon League tournament game against Green Bay. But they don't.
That would be probably EJ Mosley.
Mosley, yep, that's the one. Yep, I'm sorry, EJ Mosley.
Mosley. I was impressed by seeing him.
Too. Yeah, I was impressed seeing him in that environment and knowing he was a young player. I just couldn't. He hadn't played that much. I hadn't paid attention enough to know who he was. But they had, they basically have 2 guys that are on the younger end that look the part and that are, in theory, going to be back for them. So there's a lot of work to do for Fort Wayne.
I would actually also throw in Yuval Levin mostly because of how late he got into, because I think he didn't come in until late summer. So he missed that whole entire summer workouts process. And I feel like maybe he was getting a lot more playing time at the tail end of the season, and maybe that's indicative of of what's to come. But when you look at a guy like him, and you look at a guy like Ibrahim Kaba, they got to get some weight on him for sure, because those guys are pretty tall, but those guys are really skinny too.
Well, Levin was really good against Green Bay both times they played at the Crest Center in Green Bay. He made an impact where he hadn't been doing a lot. But as a general rule, Bob, I've been fooled before. So until I see a player from Israel until I see a player who's from Israel and join the team late, return for a second year, I'm just assuming they all end up at Pepperdine. I'm looking at you, Jonathan Levy.
It's like Jonathan Levy crawled so everyone else can walk.
Yep. I just assume these guys. I assume these guys come and are like, I'll just go anywhere and I'll figure it out afterwards. But of course, I'm kidding a little bit when I say that.
But when you do look at, you're not. There's going to be a lot of guys that aren't going to be on this team next year. Theoretically, if you look at, if they can get more out of Kaba, if they can get more out of EJ Mosley, if they get more out of Levin, I would even throw in Quentin Morgan. We didn't see a lot of him this year, and Chris Morgan. I feel like I feel like John Kaufman is going to bring in somebody else too. He's been able to work the portal the last couple of years. I suspect we'll see him do that again. And I feel like, development wise, I think it'll feel like the bigger guys will help them get in a better position than they were this year, but we'll see. I guess.
If you're a dynamic guard, Fort Wayne against Green Bay just, they ran a lot of activity to get to the same thing over and over again, which was the, ball handler going over the top of a high screen. And then, if it's Max Nelson, you could space, out. Now you've got to decide how you want to defend that. Green Bay was kind of flattening that out with their big guy trying to push the ball handler to the sideline, and then until the guard could recover through and then get back to the shooter. That worked for them every time they played. But my thing is, if you're a guard and you're, looking around and want to transfer, it'd be hard pressed to say, Fort Wayne's not a good place to go because they're going to put you in a spot
Sure.
to be successful. I mean, Coach Hoffman, he's no fool. He guards win, and he puts these guys in a position to win and also do it in a way that, it sets you up to be a professional player potentially at some level. So I do agree. What you're going to see. We may not know who it is, but there's going to be somebody. Before it was Jackson and Bello, and now it was Hadnot and Craig. It's going to be somebody, and he's going to find the right guys that are going to look at the way they play and go, hell yeah, I want to be part of that because it's going to make me look.
I should also point out too that
be a pro.
I should also point out that they redshirted Ja'Cory Lipkins, and
I'll take your word for it.
Kaufman has it. Well, Kaufman has this. Kaufman has done this before. He did this with crap. It was Quentin Morton Robertson. He did this exact same thing with him. So he does know, especially the way that the backcourt is set up. Yeah, I could see how Ja'Cory Lipkins was probably not going to get as much playing time as he should have, and so they made the option. I don't know. I feel like that guy might be a sleeper next year. So I'll be on the lookout for that guy too. So, all right.
Yeah, whoever's the starting guard for Fort Wayne is going to be an all-conference player. It's just a matter of knowing who that's going to be. And right now, we don't know because there's too much up in the air for them. But yeah, it'd go a long way. If you think about this Fort Wayne team, imagine if they would have been able to retain Chandler Cuthrell, who had a really good year for Elon, and you look at the weakness that they had. And Elise was nice. He was at least they could do one thing. He could finish with the left hand around the hoop, but he was damn good at it. But had you had a more dynamic player like Cuthrell, and remember Eric Mulder, he left to go to Iowa State and really didn't play. Obviously, he went home, big money, top 5 team in the country. Like nobody's begrudging him for that, but he definitely didn't upgrade his situation on the court. He upgraded his situation off the court, but not necessarily in terms of his own on-court play. So there's an opportunity for them to, go out there and get a little bit more impactful player in the front court too. Who we got next, Milwaukee or Youngstown? Where do you want to go, Bob?
We're going with Milwaukee because if there's any team that was thankful that this season is over, it's got to be Milwaukee because they kept losing guys.
When Amar Aguilar broke his ankle at the end, I was like, okay.
I didn't even recall. See, that's the thing. I didn't even realize he did that. I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, come on. Really?
Yeah.
He didn't get, I looked at the box score. I thought I imagined him not playing. And I was right because he broke his ankle and just chalk it up for another guy. I mean, if they didn't have, that is just, I don't even know what to say about that.
You with their team, you obviously phase out.
I gotta ask, was their practice facility built on a ancient burial ground or something? I can't explain it.
Well, I think as much as that season it hurts, and first of all, I never want to see any of these guys get hurt, even the ones that are on the rival for my team, Green Bay, my favorite team, Green Bay. But I will say this: if you're thinking about how the old bad luck comes in threes, well, for them it came in like 2 sets of 3. So if you're looking at it like next year, they should be able to avoid the major injury bug. But if you think about it, they're losing Faison, they're losing Amar, they're losing Aaron Franklin. Tate McKenzie's going to stop playing basketball. He's been advised to stop playing basketball due to his injuries. You're not sure about D'Lo because and Hubbard in terms of if they're going to get their year back. And if they do get their year back, are they going to stay with the Panthers?
Well, I would think Hubbard would get his year back because he got hurt so early.
Yeah. And D'Lo only played one game or whatever for Miami. So again, they should get these guys back. But then D'Lo has chronic, with his shoulder injuries. This is not the first time that he's had it there. So, and if Hubbard,
had that problem last year.
Yeah. And Hubbard, who had a good season, it remains to be seen. Does he stay? If you're, if he gets his year back, does he stay? And then you have a whole slew of young guys, which they have great, if you think about with Kone and Dixon and Elam, they have, they have a nice set of young guys that hopefully they can retain, 2 or if not all 3 of those guys. And then you never know with John Lovelace, what he'll look like when he comes back. And Chandler Jackson obviously was money for them down the stretch. So it's not a barren cupboard by any means. And good news for them is, if you're recruiting, you have however many years Coach Lundy's been here, 3 or 4 years. This is the only bad one. It only happened because it was bad because they got decimated by injuries. And you can still point to the fact that they played hard as hell. Like, end of the day,
absolutely.
they were giving people fits all the way up until the end. And so
They
there's
just
a lot.
ran out of guys.
I mean, at one point in time, I got a spam call asking if I had any eligibility left. And I was like, wait. Yeah, because they were thinking if we're going to get somebody hurt, we might as well get the idiot Green Bay fan that lives right down the street from campus. Might as well get that guy hurt. I think that's
there you go.
Yep. Yeah. But all kidding aside, like they just definitely ran out of guys, but they never ran out of spirit. And I think they've got some pieces to build from. But you compare that to Youngstown, where they're losing Vlad, Nelson, Pollock, Robinette, Dawkins, Orgval, Carroll. I mean, depending, again, I haven't gone through each and every one, but all these guys are listed as senior, redshirt senior, 6-year senior. Like, there's a lot of guys. A lot of those guys aren't going to be back. And,
in fact, as near as I can tell, like, nearly none of them. This is who they're going to have back. I can tell you right now. I mean, theoretically, this is who they'll have back. Tay Blackshear's a junior, so theoretically he'll come back. You have Jaden Haynes, the freshman. You have Drew King, he's a redshirt junior. And then maybe Rich Rolfe. And that's it.
Those are the 4 guys I wrote down. And even with King, and I'm not saying this is going to be the case, but if you look at his history, he's played at 3 colleges already. So he does not have a demonstrated history of like staying in one place for a long time. You never know what you're going to get there. But yeah, Youngstown, the one thing that helps Youngstown, and hopefully that the people who have helped bankroll their program in the recent past stay committed to it, because they've had the money it takes to go out. Like, when you go and get a Vlad Salarize, who was a very good player for UT Martin the previous year in the Ohio Valley, you go out and get guys like that, Bryson Dawkins, and you keep Chris Carroll. That did not happen for free, folks. They paid top dollar for this. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. But hopefully the people who bankroll their program stay committed to that, because if you can keep Rolfe and Haynes and Blackshear and then get 4 more guys to go with it, you'll be right back in the mix. But if they can't go get the same level of guys, or if they have to change their philosophy, they don't have anything. Like, you look at what they have, they don't really have anything that you would go, okay, we got a ton to build around here.
Yeah. That is true. That is very true. And it's going to be a tough road to hoe. But to your point, they should get guys in. I mean, unless something just drastically wrong went wrong in the offseason, I do expect that, you should get a core of these guys back. At the same time, you're definitely going to get, probably as best as you can get at this level as far as the transfer portal is concerned. And I do expect that to happen. At least I hope so. Whether that, hopefully things go better next year than this year, because this year obviously didn't go very well. But that's kind of where we're at.
I think I'm not watching every Youngstown game. I just, see some things and anecdotally make an opinion on that. But like, Youngstown definitely, to me, didn't have the competitive spirit that's needed. They had a collection of reasonably paid guys that never fully seemed to come together as a team. And they never had the guard play that I think you needed to really win. But when things got tough, I mean, when things were going well, they went well. And when things were going bad, there was nobody that buck their neck and be like, this stops right now. We're going to fix that. It was more of a collection of guys than a team. At least that's what I felt watching it. And of course, I could be way off on that, but that's just what I saw. And whatever they do, I think you're going to see a little bit of a paradigm shift in terms of the type of guys they get, and not just get the best statistical guys, but get guys that really fit. That's one thing you give Green Bay, coming back to Green Bay, give them a lot of credit. Like, they went out and got guys, but if they ended up not being a fit, I mean, if you think about Green Bay's rolling, 18-14 record, and 4 of their starters were there on a 4-win team. Yeah. 4 of their starters were part of a 4-win team. So part of it isn't about necessarily having to go out and buy a bunch of guys. It's just finding the right guys to go with what you have that works, and then develop a little bit of what you have. So kind of an interesting offseason ahead for these programs. But I'm more ready to talk about the next time we talk, what goes on at Corteva Coliseum.
Yes.
Hopefully as many people as possible are listening to this, get to meet you in person, talk Horizon League hoops. I love talking Horizon League hoops. Hope to see a whole bunch of fans down there on
Oh
Sunday,
yeah.
Monday,
Should be
and
good.
Tuesday.
I'll be there. You'll be there. A whole group of our folks are going to be there, and we hope you're going to be there too. So, all right. So we'll talk about. So next episode, I guess we'll talk about the aftermath of what went down in Indy. We're going to probably talk about who's going where as far as the NCAA tournament is concerned. And hey, you never know. We might have some folks show up at the CBI because that train's never late. So. All right, so until then, horizonroundtable.com. That's where all of our articles, all of our podcast episodes are. The articles are important because we're going to be as we did last year. We're going to be posting articles during the tournament, uh, throughout that entire time. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, get to horizonroundtable.com. And definitely, definitely sign up for the email alerts. So as soon as we post those, those articles, you'll get it right in your inbox. You can pull us up. You can pull this podcast up, of course, wherever podcasts are available. You can pull us up on your Amazon or Google devices. So tune in next week. Until then, thank you all for listening.